Welcome to our Facebook live stream on Virgo. Virgo goes from approximately August 23rd to September 22nd. I say approximately because there can be some variation depending on the year and depending on what part of the world that you're in. And it's always interesting, those people that are born right on the cusp between signs. And we're in Virgo now. This is the sign of the bountiful harvest, when we get to reap the fruits of all of our labor. And this concept is really essential to the sign of Virgo. So we'll be talking today a little bit about the sign of Virgo. We'll be talking about its ruler. I follow the school of thought where its ruler is Chiron, which is an asteroid. Traditionally, Virgo is ruled by the planet Mercury. And we'll look at its associated house, the sixth house. So we'll go through each of those, and then we'll take some questions. And if you would like to learn more, we have found AstroDharma so useful. Basically, it's a combination of transpersonal astrology, Western astrology, which is a kind of astrology that uses Jungian archetypes to explain the effect of the different planets in our natal charts in particular. So we look at the archetypes and what's happening in our natal charts that affects our makeup and how we greet the world. And we combine that with Dharma, with Buddhist philosophy and practice for optimal spiritual unfolding. And we just chanced on this combination by accident because we have a retreat center, we are Dharma practitioners, and I happen to have studied astrology as a young woman. And we started getting people's charts out and looking at them and talking about them, and we found this process very helpful. And that's how AstroDharma was born. And we found it so helpful that we've decided to share it with more people. That's you. And to this end, so you can get more of a taste of it, we're offering you some free gifts. And you can access those on planetdharma.com/AstroDharma, one word. Dharma's DHARMA. And we also have a really awesome online course about the basics of AstroDharma. And you can check that out on the same webpage. So let's talk about Virgo. Virgo originally meant maiden or young woman. And it's kind of a late language gone awry thing that it got into this meaning of a virgin, of not ever having had sex. And this is for me, a very interesting part of Virgo, is one school of thought holds that there are not 12 zodiac signs. Instead, there are 6 pairs of signs, because each sign has across the zodiac its opposite. And they are literally opposites in meaning and flavor. And if there's a goal in astrology, it's to balance all 12 of the signs within ourselves so that we're standing at the point in the middle. And one way that we can do that is by looking at each pair and balance those opposites. And we get a chance to do this each month with the full moon, because the full moon is when the sun is in one sign and the moon is in its opposite. That's what makes the moon full, is that the sun's able to shine fully on it. And Virgo's opposite is Pisces. So we're just coming out of the age of Pisces, and the age lasts about 2,150 years. We're moving into the age of Aquarius. Pisces could maybe, this is arguable, but we could say that the symbol of Pisces is Jesus. Human history was very much marked by Christianity during that era. It was roughly around the time from when Jesus was reputed to be born. And one of Jesus' symbols was the fish. And the virtues of Pisces, selflessness, the virtues and the non-virtues of Pisces, selflessness, martyrdom, a kind of union with all of creation. Those are very Christian themes. Now its opposite, Pisces' opposite is Virgo. And what we saw in the age of Pisces was a real negation of the qualities of Virgo. So there was a real overemphasis, for example, on virginity in the Christian church, but in that sense of not having sex rather than in its original sense of a kind of purity. Or Virgo is also about a woman who can stand in her own power and be wed to herself. Right? That doesn't mean she doesn't have a man in her life, like a nun in Christianity. Maybe she doesn't, but it means that she has stepped into that balance within herself of feminine and masculine qualities. So that's the real flavor of Virgo, is a feminine archetype that is in its own power. And therefore, Virgo is also the sign of healers. We can look at the traditional healers that have existed throughout human history. And these, in the age of Pisces, these were the women that got burned at the stake as witches. So that's an interesting vantage point from which to study the sign of Virgo. And now we can see Virgo much more coming into its own, becoming more balanced, and it's getting more respect as a sign as well. It used to be a little bit looked down on as the kind of sign of nitpicky and chronic hypochondria, for example. And now as Virgo comes into its own and gets its own balance, we have a better understanding of this sign, and we're more able to incorporate this sign in a healthful way in our own lives. So I made some allusions to Virgo has a reputation for having too much attention to detail and being overly sensitive, and this is true. This is Virgo in its imbalanced manifestations. And when it's balanced, Virgo has remarkable sensitivity, has excellent attention to detail and mind for systems, like being able to, if you think of a healer, someone who can classify all the different plants and which phyla the different plants are in, which families different plants are in, and this plant is good for this ailment and this other plant is good for this ailment, but only if you prepare it in such a way. Those are the strengths of Virgo. Yay! We also see the power of Virgo emerging as we become more aware of Gaia, of our planet, as one massive living organism that needs to have all of its different systems working healthfully. The different systems need to be working healthfully, each system, but also interacting with all of the other systems in order for our planet to thrive. And we humans are just one part of those systems. So as we have a better understanding of that, we have a better understanding of being a healthful human race and one of many thriving species on a healthy planet. So that's the gift that Virgo is really bringing to us in this 21st century. So that's a bit about Virgo. Let me see. I did mention Virgo is very much about mind-body connection. And so that's an excellent study for this month of Virgo. If Virgo is prominent in your chart, and even if it's not, we all have Virgo in our charts. It's such an important study to notice how is the organism feeling and how is this related to what's going on in my mind, what kind of thoughts am I thinking, and what are the feelings that are coming up for me right now. And trying to experiment with those so we can tell the difference. I had a experience I wrote about in our book, Wasteland to Pure Land, where I was feeling really unwell. I think I had the flu. I was laying in bed and I was trying to treat it like a meditation. So I was meditating on feeling unwell. And basically it was a meditation on misery. And that was interesting and miserably interesting. And then I noticed that I had a tanka, a sacred painting of the medicine Buddha at the foot of my bed. And I thought, oh, maybe my time would be better spent saying medicine Buddha mantras. He's the Buddha of healing after all. So I started saying medicine Buddha mantras, and it was almost like a comic strip, I felt better almost immediately. And so it was a great meditation on the mind-body connection and what we can do to help ourselves feel better and achieve wellness. Okay, so those are some things about Virgo. Let's take a moment and talk about Virgo's ruler. If you're just tuning in, welcome to our live stream on Virgo. It's ruler Chiron and the associated house, 6th house. And if you'd like to learn more about our awesome studies of AstroDharma, we would love for you to learn more. And that's why we're giving you some free gifts on planetdharma.com/AstroDharma. And you can learn more about our really excellent online course at that URL as well. So we invite you to do that. Okay, so Chiron is an asteroid. It was only discovered in 1977, pretty recently. It's located between Saturn and Uranus. And Chiron in Greek myth was a centaur. He was highly respected. He was immortal, so he was one of the gods. He was a healer. He was he wasn't a healer yet. He was a tutor to many of the gods. So he was a tutor to Apollo. He was a tutor and trainer. He trained heroes in the martial arts. He trained Hercules, for example. And in just what was a unfortunate accident, he was playing around with Hercules. You know, I think they guy stuff, right? They were doing martial arts and having a good time. And Hercules had arrows dipped in the blood of the Hydra. So the greatest poison that there was at that time. And one accidentally hit Chiron and gave him this mortal wound. However, because he was immortal, he couldn't die. So he had this terrible, terrible wound that would never go away, and he was living for all of eternity. So that's how Chiron became a great healer, is he just, being immortal, he had all of this time to experiment with every possible remedy that there was, and he learned how they all worked and how they all didn't. And he was already a very well-respected tutor and trainer, and so people then started coming to him to learn about healing. And where we have Chiron in our charts, this is the theme of Chiron, is that we have a terrible wound that is not really anybody's fault. And this is unique in our chart. Usually most of the problems or challenges in our chart we can attribute to something in our family history or something that happened to us as a baby or in our womb or as a young child, but not Chiron. It's just something that is very painful for us and cannot be healed. It's just something that we'll live with our entire lives. And so the journey of Chiron is, do we become healers in that area? Do we learn to become healers? Do we try everything we possibly can to alleviate that wound? Or do we just learn to suffer? I recommend the former, because it's through that we can become great healers and teach others about healing, because we've learned to live with this pain and we've learned what can make it somewhat better. And we also have that wisdom of the Buddha's first ennobling truth is, depending on your translation, it's life is struggle or life is suffering or all formations are suffering. And basically what it boils down to is that suffering is a inescapable part of human existence. That said, the Buddha also taught that we can make it better. And that's what the whole path of Buddhist practice is about. And that's what the whole path of Chiron is about, is we can learn to at least make the suffering meaningful, at least transform it into a gift of healing. And so where we have Chiron in our chart shows where that transformation is going to occur and where we can become healers, both of ourselves and offer that to other people. Just a moment, please. Is that a question?
It is.
Oh, there is a question. Is it about Chiron or Virgo?
Yes.
Okay, so we will take a question and then we'll go on to the 6th house in a bit.
There's a question from Sharon.
Hi, Sharon.
And she's wondering, because she said that she understood that the ruling planet for Virgo was Mercury. So just wondering what the relationship is.
Yeah, that's a great question, Sharon. So historically, there are different schools of thought in astrology, and you just need to decide which ones that you ascribe to. So basically, if we look at history over the last several hundred years, we are discovering new celestial bodies, right? So the outer planets are relatively recent additions. So before those outer planets were discovered, planets would double up. So before Pluto was discovered, Mars also ruled Scorpio. Before Uranus was discovered, Saturn also ruled Aquarius. So similarly, Mercury rules Gemini. And before Chiron was discovered, it also ruled Virgo. So depending on what kind of astrology you follow or what your own experience as a student of astrology or practitioner of astrology, what that has shown you, you choose what you believe the ruler is to be. Some people choose co-rulership, that both planets rule. And in the kind of astrology that I studied, we considered Chiron the ruler of Virgo. Some people think it's co-ruled with Mercury, and some people think Mercury still rules it, but I've always found Chiron to be a great ruler for Virgo. And that's really the only school that I've ever studied. So hope that answers your question, and feel free to follow up on the chat there if you like. And in the meantime, if you're just tuning in, welcome. This is our monthly Facebook live stream on AstroDharma. And that wasn't a very Virgoan action on AstroDharma. And you can learn more about our adventures exploring AstroDharma. We'd like to share these with you. So if you look at planetdharma.com/AstroDharma, there's some free gifts there for you to learn more about AstroDharma and how it can, what you can learn from it, how it can make a difference in your life. And we have an awesome online course, Introduction to AstroDharma, the Foundations of AstroDharma. And you can learn more about that also at planetdharma.com/AstroDharma. We encourage you to check that out. So let's talk about the associated house with Virgo and Chiron, and that's the 6th house. So we're at 6 out of 12. So that means we've done half of the zodiac. That's a kind of half circle I'm forming there. So our last house, so the first half of the zodiac is really about this thing that we call the self. And we like to joke in Buddhism, the non-self, because Buddhism holds it. The self is just an amalgamation, that there's not really a self. But that's a different paradigm. So the first half of the zodiac is about the building blocks of this so-called self. And so Virgo is the end of this process. And already with the 6th house and with Virgo, we're starting to see the move into relationships with other, which is the top half of the zodiac, the second half. So with the 6th house, we're really taking stock of everything that we've learned in these first 5, the previous 5 houses. And we're looking, what are my talents? That's kind of second house. What are my gifts? Second house. How do I like to express these or communicate these with others? That's third house. How am I feeling at the innermost root of my being? What am I all about? That's fourth. And fifth is, how do I like to share? How do I like to show up in the world? And then the 6th house is about, and what am I going to do with all of these things? So 6th house is really about our path. What is the unique path of this unique being? And so the 6th house is about vocation. The 6th house is about what am I going to do with this life? And it's also called the house of service, because in a sense it's what am I going to offer? How am I going to serve in this lifetime? What can I do, or who am I that I can offer to other beings? So shorthand for 6th house is the house of vocation, the house of service. It's also considered the house of health, because in Virgo spirit, the better aligned we are with this life purpose, this unique expression of this unique being, the more whole we're going to feel, the more in alignment we're going to feel, and the better our health is likely to be. If we feel that we have a deep calling and we go and do something completely different because we feel like we have to, or we feel like we should, or we feel like we can't do what our calling is, there is the source of dis-ease, unease, and unwellness. So the sixth house is really about getting all these things into alignment. So again, that mind, body, spirit connection that Virgo is so well known for. Interestingly, sixth house also pertains to pets. And pets have a lot to do with wellness, if you've noticed. What are they called now? Not companion animals. There's anyway. We're in our society at large. We're recognizing this and is seeing the important role that having something to care for, how that can be a healing for ourselves. Having something else to care for. Did you have a question there, Eva?
Yeah, we do. We have a question from Dan.
Hi, Dan.
He says that he has, so we're going back to Chiron. He says he has Chiron in Cancer in the 8th, which is directly opposite Saturn in Capricorn in the 2nd.
Okay.
And so he's wondering if you could comment on that.
Okay, Chiron in Cancer in the 8th. Okay, so Cancer often has a lot to do with our relationship with our mother, or just our mother herself, or both, and then as a association, then our own self-nurturing. And you have that in the 8th house. So 8th house is this very deep house it covers the areas in our life where the boundaries between this world and the next become a little fuzzy. So the 8th house tends to rule birth and death and sex also, because when we're making love with another person, it's, something else is going on, and it's a little unclear exactly what. We have some taste of something much more profound than we usually do in our daily life. So you have Chiron there. So some interesting things to look at maybe in your mother's history, what she felt her calling was like. If she was like a nurse or a hospice worker or involved in something like that, like in a women's clinic, that would make a lot of sense. It can manifest in a lot of different ways, so we can talk about that at another time, or you can follow up in the chat. But there will be a wound there. Maybe she wanted to do that. A psychologist. Psychology is also an 8th house profession. She may have wanted to pursue those things and felt like she wasn't able to. And then opposite, let's see, Saturn in the 2nd in Capricorn. So Saturn in Capricorn, that's a double Saturn. Saturn rules Capricorn, so that gives it an extra strong energy. Saturn is typically the sign of the father, although Capricorn's a female sign. And it doesn't necessarily, Cancer is also typically the sign of the mother, as I mentioned, but sometimes they can be switched. If we have, for example, a very nurturing father, he might be the one that's represented by Cancer, and we might have a mother who is, say, a teacher, which is Capricorn and Saturn are all about teaching. So sometimes they can get flipped. So take these lightly and see how they work. So Saturn in the 2nd in Capricorn. Wow, a lot about, so 2nd house is the house of resources. And Saturn and Capricorn have a lot to do with material resources too. So since they're opposite, there's probably going to be, when there's an opposition, it's kind of a seesaw that it's hard for those energies to be in balance and both be kind of on at the same time. They'll tend to sort of rock into one or the other. And that's our challenge, is to get them both working well and playing well together. And so with that configuration, you can see Saturn is very materialistic. Capricorn's very materialistic. Second house is often about material resources too. And then eighth house is eighth house is not very interested in material resources. It's much more interested in the mysteries of the universe. And so there may be a bit of a dilemma going on between those two paradigms, like what we can see, what we can hold, what we can hang on to, and all of those powerful things that there's no getting a grasp on. So try that on for size, and we can follow up with that sometime if you like. Yes, we have another question. Keep them coming. Type your questions in the chat. You're most welcome. And you can do this. We post on AstroDharma every week, and you're always welcome to post questions. It makes it really interesting. And I'll do my best to reply.
We have a question from Richard Nathaniel.
Hey, Richard.
He says, hi, Catherine.
Hello.
So Richard says, I have Venus conjunct Jupiter in Virgo in the 6th house.
Oh, wow, that's nice. That's a nice placement.
Yeah, and so he says that these are beneficial planets, but he's also heard that Virgo isn't the best place for these planets, being Venus and Jupiter. So he's wondering how you would interpret that.
Yes. Okay, so Richard's referring to, there's a traditional system that says a planet is exalted in a certain sign. That means it really flourishes in a certain sign, and a planet can be in its detriment in another sign. So for example, if you have a fiery planet like Mars in, say, Pisces, a water sign, then the water tends to put out the fire. So that's what we mean when we say some planets do better in some signs than others. So yeah, Virgo is about Jupiter is about expanding. And Virgo is not about expanding. Virgo is about classifying. So it's a little bit about and analyzing. And Jupiter doesn't want to analyze because it just wants to kind of get out there and do amazing things. So yeah, that's not the, in that sense, it's not its kind of natural place of thriving. But that's what's so interesting about AstroDharma is there are ways for these energies to thrive together, and that's our task, is to figure out how to do that. Because if we don't do that, it just, whatever happens, happens, and sometimes that can lead to a suboptimal life or suboptimal expression of those energies. However, let's see, Venus conjunct Jupiter, that's really beautiful because Venus is about relationships, it's about that feminine relationship. It's one of the planets of anima together with the moon, that feminine energy, and it's combined with Jupiter, so that heartfelt relationship function is going to be really large. That's a really kind of, a nice heart connection. And in the sixth house in Virgo, is that right? In the 6th house, that is going to be a really wonderful thing that you can offer through whatever vocation that you decide to do. So it's a great placement for any kind of healthcare professional. And I consider Dharma a health care profession. So those are just a few thoughts. And look forward to the further exploration of how you see those energies thriving together. We can make suggestions, we can point to examples that we've seen of how energies work well together, but it's really, every person's chart is unique and it's your life. So it's really up to each of us to figure out what works well. And that's what makes life so interesting and exciting. If you're just tuning in, this is AstroDharma Facebook live stream, and I think we're coming up on time, is that right? Oh darn, it's been so fun. So this has been Virgo. Thanks for joining us. We hope you've enjoyed it. Please check in every week. We share more posts on AstroDharma, and you're very welcome to post questions there. I'll do my best to answer them. And in the meantime, please do check out our free gifts and our truly awesome online course about the foundations of AstroDharma. You can learn more through this really great course that we've put together. And you can learn more about these and access your free gifts at planetdharma.com/AstroDharma.